Throughout the course of all the Transformers movies, Autobot leader Optimus Prime fights a multitude of threats. The brutal leader of the Decepticons, Megatron, the Decepticons' originator, the Fallen, his own former mentor, Sentinel Prime, and Quintessa, the robot lady claiming to be an actual god. But while he fights the many Earth-destroying forces of evil, it seems Optimus has been blind to his largest threat: humanitarian law. See, here on Earth we have a set of laws that govern what is or isn't allowed in periods of armed conflict. They were put into place in an attempt to limit the negative effects that a war may have to the people of Earth as a whole. But it seems no one really told Optimus Prime. He landed here in 2007 with his big gun and his energy swords, ready to take out the Decepticons no matter the cost. Well, he should have slowed down, because there is a cost, one that old Optimus sorely looked past, and it might be his greatest downfall. So today, we're putting him on trial and figuring out the many war crimes of Optimus Prime. Now, you might be thinking, Flip, Optimus Prime doesn't need to be tried for any crimes. He's a giant alien robot from outer space. He's not even in the bounds of human law. And to that notion, I say, you're not just wrong, you're stupid, because the Transformers are in the bounds of Earth law for multiple reasons. For one thing, Optimus Prime personally declared Earth his home.
A new world to call home.
Even invited others of his species to it. In addition, at some point in between the first movie and Revenge of the Fallen, the second, Optimus signed something called the
Alien Autobot Cooperation Act.
In case you don't remember high school government class, an act, according to the US Senate, is a legislation which has passed both chambers of Congress in identical form, been signed into law by the president, thus becoming a law. So if Optimus exists under this US law, then he applies to the other US laws, and therefore worldwide law. Even aside from that, this is further proven by the fifth movie, The Last Knight, when the US government makes a deal with Megatron. You know, serial murderer and leader of the faction called the Decepticons. In any case, in order to work with him, they agreed to release some of his Decepticons from prison. From this, we learn that they were in prison on actual criminal charges, including
bank robbery, aggravated assault, murder, double murder, triple murder, 9 dead.
So apparently, at some point or another, they were tried in an actual court of law. So, Cybertronians can, and have, been tried on actual criminal charges. And Optimus isn't any different. So, we establish Optimus is in the bounds of human law, at least after the events of the first movie, because it was at the end of that he established Earth as his home. So you know what? We're just gonna throw that one away. That's his get-out-of-jail-free card. Nothing in that movie legally counts as tribal offenses. We're going to use something called the Geneva Conventions. The Geneva Conventions are basically a bunch of laws, which have been revised and rewritten a couple of times, but the most well-known version of them were ratified and signed after World War II. They're basically a set of rules for when an armed conflict is taking place. And defining what an armed conflict actually is pretty easy here. I'm taking mine from a paper published by the Red Cross. It states that armed conflict exists whenever there is a resort to armed force between two or more states, or armed confrontations occurring between governmental armed forces and the forces of one or more armed groups. The Autobots work with the US government against the Decepticons in Revenge of the Fallen and Dark of the Moon. In Age of Extinction and The Last Knight, they're working with no governmental help against the United States government and other factions, but it kind of flip-flops. Either way, these are both under the bounds of armed conflict. So the Geneva Conventions are at play. There are 4 of them, each covering a different subject. We're going to simply go one by one and see if Optimus happens to break just any of them. And even though Optimus is the commander of the Autobots as a whole, I'm only counting actions he personally committed or was literally there for. So, let's begin.
That hurt, man. It's supposed to hurt.
The first convention is made to protect soldiers who are hors de combat, or out of the battle. It includes sick or wounded soldiers, medical personnel, civilian supports, and even civilians who pick up arms to repel invaders. But we want to focus on that first part, sick or wounded soldiers. Now, Optimus Prime faces a lot of enemies who are a lot stronger than him, but at the end of the third film, Dark of the Moon, he eventually faces Megatron, who at this point is very much weaker than Optimus is. This is the 4th time we see Optimus facing Megatron. In movie 1, Sam kills Megatron at the climax of the fight. In the next movie, Revenge of the Fallen, Megatron is resurrected, and he fights Optimus again and kills him. Later in that movie, Optimus is resurrected, fights Megatron, and blows a chunk of his head out and ripping off his arm. Which, I completely understand. If someone killed me, I'd be upset too. But in Dark of the Moon, we see a visibly weak Megatron, one who is clearly not up to par with his former self. I mean, the dude has tiny Decepticons working to fix the chunk of his head that got blown off. He's definitely wounded. He's been moping around the African wastelands and totally looks like a hobo. And this time when Optimus fights him, he kills him. If you look at that fight, Megatron is literally struggling to even get his gun up before Optimus kills him, which he does, by the way, in literally 10 seconds, and that's being completely generous. Now, is this deserved? Probably. Megatron was trying to enslave humanity, but it's in direct violation of the First Geneva Convention, Article 12. The wounded and sick shall not be murdered, exterminated, or subjected to torture or biological experiments. Optimus Prime, you committed a war crime. That was really fast, but just for the sake of it, let's keep going.
What are you, like an alien or something?
Now, this one's a little weird. It's mostly talking about those on a boat who are injured or like shipwrecked, but that doesn't apply to any Transformers. There aren't many boat scenes in this movie, especially not ones where Optimus Prime is president, but I found a handy little article by the University of Pennsylvania entitled Conflicts in Space, International Humanitarian Law and its Application to Space Warfare. Very fun. Now, since the Transformers are from space, I thought it was fair to expand the definition of the Geneva Conventions for this matter. In this article, it speaks about the state of astronauts in terms of war law. It says in times of war, astronauts are considered to be envoys of humankind, guaranteed of protection, aid, and assistance at all times. Which, Optimus does well at that. I'll give him his props. He saves the life of Sentinel Prime, who was stranded on the moon, but he didn't know he was a traitor yet. Still, good job, I'll give you that. It isn't super important, I just think it's kind of funny that space warfare is a valid law topic. But it did make me consider something about the nature of space. See, Sentinel Prime crash landed on the moon. He was shipwrecked, but something similar happens to Earth. After the first Transformers movie, multiple Decepticons crash landed on Earth from space. After finding out Megatron was dead, they pretty much went into hiding, fearing also being killed. Some of them worked to find Megatron's body, but some of them just tried to cope with having no leader. These Decepticons, by all intensive purposes, were shipwrecked, stuck in a weird place with nowhere to go, managed to reach land, but any way to get out is a bust. Perhaps the most notable of these Decepticons was named Demolisher. He basically decided to hide out and also take weaker, smaller Decepticons under his care until a new Decepticon leader emerged. However, Nest, which is the governmental force containing the Autobots and human soldiers who worked with them, hunted Demolisher down, and after chasing him, Optimus shot him in the head. Now, Demolisher wasn't a saint. Before he died, he said some real ominous stuff.
This is not your planet to rule. The fallen shall rise again.
He destroyed a lot of property and attempted to flee, probably killed a few people, but Demolisher had no weapons on him. He was also helping other so-called shipwrecked Decepticons. So by all technicality, this violates Article 12 and 18 of the Second Geneva Convention, which mandates that shipwrecked ones be collected and cared for, and not killed. Whether or not Demolisher deserved to die, another topic. But Optimus killed him, which is another war crime.
I understand. No prisoners, only trophies.
The third convention relates to how prisoners of war are treated. The Autobots don't ever take prisoners of war, and quite honestly, Decepticons don't either. At least they don't keep them for very long, as evidenced by Soundwave in the Dark of the Moon. However, the Autobots are making a big mistake here, and they should be keeping prisoners of war. Because while this law doesn't seem applicable, surrender law is counted under this section. Because while not specifically stated in the Geneva Conventions, it is a well-known fact that if someone surrenders, they should be secured and safeguarded, a policy directly written in the US Army's list of policies. Cambridge University states, it is incontrovertible that under international humanitarian law, it is unlawful to directly target an enemy who has surrendered. But apparently Optimus Prime doesn't read university law reviews in his spare time, because he did directly target an enemy who surrendered. After he kills Megatron, Sentinel Prime, Optimus' former member, pleads with Optimus to not kill him. Now, just listen to this and see if that's someone who still wants to fight.
No, Optimus!
Yeah, didn't think so. Sentinel was a traitor to the Autobots, killed Ironhide, and tried to enslave humanity. But Optimus here violates another humanitarian law, bringing us to our final convention.
Ironhide, you know we don't harm humans. What is with you?
This convention directly relates to how civilians are treated during an armed conflict. You can't kill, torture, or threaten a civilian in any area. A practice Optimus Prime would clearly know, right? Freedom is the right of all sentient beings and all? Well, not exactly. In Age of Extinction, Optimus learns that the Humans Technology Company, NX Solutions Incorporated, have been dissecting Transformers that they've either collected from previous battles or had been killed by lockdown and sent to them. Reasonably, this angers Optimus. He then storms the facilities, causes a whole bunch of destruction, and threatens the workers. But here's the thing. These aren't armed forces. They're scientists who are working in conjunction with the government, but they're not government workers. In fact, when Optimus and co leave, CIA operative Harold Attinger tells the CEO of KSI that the base was being taken over by the CIA.
This is now a CIA military op.
If they were already in control there, there'd be no need to state that. So, Optimus Stormwood is technically a civilian organization, even if they had a government contract, threatened innocent workers, and was very close to actually killing them. Now, he's angry. I get it. I'd be mad too if my friends were being ripped apart and turned into weapons. But that doesn't make it not illegal. This is a direct violation of the 4th Convention, which means Optimus Prime has violated all the Geneva Conventions. All 4 sections, he has an offense. So, here we see Optimus Prime, definitely a war criminal. But I'm sure multiple times during this video you said, Flip, there was no other way. And while it's debatable that each action was necessary or not, I want to point out a different incarnation of Optimus Prime, the one in the show Transformers Prime. In one episode, entitled Stronger Faster, the Autobot medic, Ratchet, basically gets high on steroids and becomes a killing machine. At one point, Ratchet almost kills a miner before Optimus stops him. He specifies that this is a servant class Decepticons, which proves that Megatron owns slaves, but that's another video. And Optimus says that he shouldn't be killed.
That was a Decepticon minor. Servant class, not warrior class.
He stops Ratchet from committing what is essentially a war crime. Now, I don't know the laws in that universe, but some version of Optimus in the multiverse is aware of war crimes, and ensures that movie Optimus really has no excuse. I mean, the circumstances may have been tough, and his actions may have seemed justified, but when it comes to it, he's guilty of 4 charges of war crimes. 4. Optimus Prime, you're a war criminal. But then again, it's not like we've ever had any evidence of Optimus Prime being a violent killer, right? Right? Hey, it's Flip. What a video. I researched this one for quite a bit, and I'm glad it's finally done. I originally had more crimes Optimus did, but maybe if this video does well, I'll do another. Officially out of the slump. Hopefully there will be more videos very, very soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more vicious teardowns of beloved characters, and let me know down in the comments who else needs to be tried for their crimes against humanity. And as always, thank you so much for watching.